Get started officially for this morning. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's digital accessibility video and audio training as part of our Digital Accessibility Essentials training series. I'm Amy Komacher, Instructional Development Specialist with Learning and Organizational Development Unit.
And I'm Summer McLean, an Instructional Aid Associate. I work with Amy also in the Learning and Organizational Development Unit.
So we'll kick off today with a quick recap. Most of you have been here, so we'll keep it brief. What is digital accessibility? So digital accessibility refers to the usability of digital content for individuals with disabilities, and this impacts how they perceive or interact with digital content, such as documents, videos, and websites. And obviously today's topic is going to be centered around video and audio. And digital accessibility also means that we design the digital content to be usable to the widest audience possible. And what's interesting about this is this overlaps with other factors of good design, such as universal design for learning. And part of the reason that this is so important, especially in extension, is we work with learners. Thank you for whoever put in the request for captions. Those should be enabled now. If you would like to utilize closed captions, the closed caption buttons in the toolbar on Zoom. So back to digital accessibility. We're designing accessibility or designing digital content to be accessible to as many people as possible. And so then there's also the why, right? So creating digital content that's accessible benefits a vast audience, and we as Extension serve a very broad audience. We have youth, we have the elderly people, we provide learning across the lifespan, and all of these folks want to be able to interact with our content in a meaningful way. And you know, when you create accessible content, it really improves the user experience for really everyone. And I think about this too in other ways that accessibility is incorporated in everyday life. And one of the things I was thinking about the other day was my weekly trip to the grocery store with my kiddo. So as part of accessible spaces, you need like 36-inch wide doorways, walkways. The wider those doorways, the wider the walkways. They're generally intended for folks with wheelchairs or maybe the scooter carts at the store. Well, as a parent of a young child, I have had that lapse in judgment where I let my kid have that giant car cart and they ride in the little car and they steer. And I was once in a store that had too many holiday displays up and the walkways were cluttered. I got stuck and I needed the help of 2 additional friendly customers to help me get unstuck without taking down a whole display. So, you know, these accessible spaces are good for a lot of people. So when you're shopping, you might think about the person who got conned into letting their kid in the car cart, or perhaps the person who got the cart with the wheel that won't turn, or an elderly person trying to shop independently that may not have the strength to turn the cart. But basically that wider space is good for a lot of folks at the grocery store. And frankly, I will never be using a car cart again. That was terrible. Anyway, so moving on. You know, we really want to just make the experience of using our content great for all of our learners. And by doing so, we maximize the ability of the content to be consumed in multiple ways. And so this also lends well to different learning styles and overlaps with good instructional design. And finally, the last bit here, digital accessibility is required by law and is also part of our policy at Ohio State. So all digital content that we turn out should be accessible. And we're here to help you learn what that means exactly when it comes to actually creating the content beyond the policy. So we will keep moving and we will get into production considerations.
So I'm just going to talk a little bit about if if I know some people are mostly producing their own video, whether it's some type of lecture recording or recording for your 4-H audience, whatever it may be. And then other people are more so procuring video to be able to distribute to other people. So there are a couple of different concerns or considerations, whether you're doing either or both of those things in your work. So I just want to address a few considerations for those of you who are actually creating your own video to distribute or show at your programs. So the first thing I want to mention is what not many of us think about when we are recording a video with maybe a PowerPoint slide in the background, and that's verbal referencing of on-screen elements. So I've added a pie chart here, another pie chart. If you've been here the last 2 weeks, I like my pie charts for demonstration. But say you have something that's on your screen that is very helpful for a visual learner, a sighted person to see. They can look at this pie chart while you're speaking on screen and be able to tell what's happening in this chart. But for those who are maybe low vision or blind users, it's very helpful for them listening. And if they're deaf, blind, or maybe just deaf, if they're reading the transcripts afterwards, it's very helpful if you actually verbally narrate or reference what's on your PowerPoint slide or in your background in your video. So when you're going along, whether it's a lecture video or anything like that, it's helpful if you can say, and now on the screen, I've got a pie chart showing first and second quarter sales, blah, blah, blah. First quarter sales are 3.2 units. That's about a quarter of the sales, and then, or that's your second quarter. And then our first quarter sales were about 75% of the sales. And that just helps somebody who cannot see or someone who will be reading the transcript afterwards to understand what's happening on screen, even though they can't see it. And then along with that is also, and Amy, please jump in if you think of anything else to mention, but along with that is color contrast, which we've talked about the last 2 weeks. So I'm not going to touch on it too much, but what you can see here in the pie chart that I've provided is there are 2 very different colors. And not only that, I'm not using color as the only means of conveying the information in the pie chart. So I've also have labels on my pie chart for each of those slices to say, this is my second quarter sales, this is my first quarter sales. And what I really like about charts in PowerPoint and Word is that you can kind of split them off to have that white space in the middle. So it's a little bit better of a visualization for folks. Also, when talking about color contrast, if you're filming a video, you might want to consider maybe what your actor or you're wearing in your video. If you've got a black background, or you're against a green cornfield, you might not want to wear a black shirt, for example, especially if you're doing a lot of moving around. And so that's just another color contrast that you might want to consider. If you're using a green screen, don't wear a bright green shirt. Amy, anything to add there with the color contrast?
Yeah, along those lines, like Summer was saying, with what your on-screen talent is wearing. So like if you have a really dark background, you may not want like the Ohio State black shirts. I think part of the challenge is, we like to wear branded clothes on camera. If you've got a farmer in E-Fields, you might actually choose the black shirt because red and green can be pretty tricky for colorblind viewers. So, be aware of whether you're choosing a scarlet or a black shirt or a gray shirt, and your background or the primary color in your background when you're going to produce a video, and it will go a long ways for all of the viewers.
Thanks, Amy. That's a good point for colorblind folks with the green and the red. And another point I'd like to make is with text and timing of text on screen, whether you're using After Effects or graphics on your screen or just using your PowerPoint slides, obviously we want to have a large enough text and color contrast of text to background that viewers can easily perceive that information. And when we talk about timing in a video, we want to have on-screen text on screen long enough for someone to be able to actually read that text. And with that, if you have any on-screen text that you're not verbally announcing during the video, that means that someone who is blind would not be able to actually perceive any of that information that you're only showing on screen, but not also providing in a transcript. So if you're showing on-screen text, it's also great to speak out the text that you're showing on screen, or provide that in a transcript afterwards, saying, you know, in your transcript, text on screen, and then write out what the on-screen text says. That way they're also not feeling like they're missing information. If there's a pause for someone to read on-screen text, they might think, you know, the video has stopped, or they're just missing something. And then finally, with flashing lights. So flashing lights in videos, I don't know that it's going to be a huge issue for any of us here in Extension, but flashing lights in videos have been known to, if it's a high enough frequency, to cause seizures in folks with epilepsy. There was a Pokemon show a long time ago that actually there were several cases. There's a lot of flashing lights in the screen during the show, and there were several reports of seizures resulting from that. And so when you're thinking about PowerPoint transitions or just any flashing lights on the screen, maybe you're working with vehicles and you've got a lot of flashing lights for some reason, just avoid flashing lights altogether.
And if they can't be avoided, be sure to just put some sort of warning at the beginning of your video content to help those users who may be affected avoid that. I'm thinking like if you're trying to film like a combine workshop and the combine is just going crazy and there's lights everywhere and lots of beeping noises, you might just want to put like a notice up front that there's going to be a lot of flashing lights or audio that might be bothersome to some users. So it kind of just depends on your content. Just be mindful of that as you produce.
Right. So I'm going to flip to the next slide. And these are a couple of things that a lot of us think of when we think about accessibility in video, are our closed captions and maybe a transcript. So Amy has mentioned in the past couple of sessions, the past 2 sessions, that closed captions are something that a lot of us really like to use. I'm one of those people also that I'm not hard of hearing or deaf, but I like to have my closed captions on when I'm kind of cooking in the other room, so I can look and catch what they just said, or if there's a loud noise in the background. I really like to have those closed captions on. And these closed captions are important for deaf users, and also your transcripts are important for blind or deaf-blind users to be able to perceive that information. And when we're using closed captions, we want those captions to be 98% accurate. That's the WCAG standard for, I believe, Amy, for closed captions, or the ADA standard for closed captions.
The ADA standard is 98% accurate. I mean, and I know that seems really high when we're trying to do this from a technical standpoint, but just think if you like went to your bank and the numbers they told you were only 98% accurate, like at scale, that's really difficult. So Whitney has a great question. How do you determine accuracy of your transcript? Well, I'm just gonna flat out say that most artificial intelligence generated transcripts from like YouTube or Zoom, they're not there. So just safely assume that they're not there and plan to do your very best to edit that transcript for accuracy. I guess, you know, when companies that sell these services determine accuracy, they count out the number of words and they have somebody proofread it for the number of mistakes. But that can be difficult to do because in a transcript, you know, just because it's spelled right doesn't mean it's the correct word. So it's really difficult to have ways to sort out other than just manually looking at it all. So it does take some time, but it's very critical that we do this. And it's really the best that we can provide for our learners. And of course, me and Extension always strive to provide the best for our learners. And I know we all want that. So this is one of those ways that we do that. And Anne says, can you edit closed captions before you share a recording if you had a transcribing during the live recording? So, and we'll get into how to edit those closed captions. So the live open captions, we cannot edit. And that's also why there are guidelines from the university, and I can go find those for a resource and share them later, about when to hire a live captioner versus when to let Otter handle it. And it's a little bit different for internal events, but in general, if there's if it's a public event with invitations and there's some other nuances, you're to hire a live captioner. So I can go revisit that policy and those recommendations. And also if you need them before I can get to them, you can email Eric Owens, our accessibility coordinator for the college, and he can provide that information for you. So since we got to keep moving, I'm gonna leave that part there. Dominique, I see your question.
Yeah,
and I will chat about that later in the session as we get to the next set of tools. So go ahead and keep going.
We're going to touch on some of this, and if we haven't fully answered your questions, definitely bring it back up if we didn't hit on it. But yeah, so the 98% accuracy, it's really hard to tell whether you're 98% accurate, but we really want to put forward our best effort, knowing that a lot of the captioning tools that we're using are nowhere near 98% accurate, and then making sure that we are editing those to the best of our ability. And we'll get to the editing in a little bit. And if you're not creating your videos, but you're only sharing or distributing or curating a video, you want to make sure any of the videos that you're selecting to share do already have closed captions. Because YouTube has the automatic closed caption feature, that's a great place to search for a video that you might be sharing with others. And I want to note that Vimeo does not automatically close caption their videos. Some of them have captions and some of them don't, but a lot of times Vimeo does not have closed captions, so that's not really a great place to look if you're trying to find a video to share related to whatever content you're teaching in your program. And we also want to provide, along with closed captions, if you are posting your video somewhere, such as Canvas, in an email or on a blog or something like that, on a website, we want to include a downloadable transcript along with that video. And the best transcripts include those audio descriptions, like I mentioned, where you're referring to those on-screen elements that people can't see and describing those. And then also, if there's on-screen text that you're not reading out loud, you're including that on-screen text in the transcript as well. And we'll talk about how you can access transcripts with Zoom meetings and those type of things next. So along with accessing transcripts and captions, that kind of goes along with our options for hosting our videos. And so I'm going to switch the mic over to Amy and let her get into a little bit of the policy while I pull up some demos.
So we'll start with Zoom. That's listed at the top of the slide there. While Summer pulls up Zoom, I'm going to kind of reference Nikki's question about the OSU provided solutions. So Ohio State currently provides Zoom, which does have an automatic captioning feature while you record. So for pre-recorded content, Zoom will not caption it very well. You could try to play it through a Zoom room and run the transcription for existing content. But that said, the results of that effort are going to largely depend on the quality of your audio. If your audio has a lot of background noise from your existing content, the transcript isn't going to work very well, and you might actually save time by re-recording that audio in Zoom to get that fresh transcript off an original audio track and original video content. So with the Zoom platform, we can really work on captioning content that we're creating now. It isn't ideal for retrofitting content. And Zoom is approved for S3 data. I just checked that on the Cloud Assessment Registry. So that is also a nice piece that if you are working on internal data or data that is not public, that Zoom is a safer service for those data elements.
So I can pull that up. Now I can do a new share. So I'm going to share my desktop. I got a lot of stuff going on, but so if you have not already worked a lot with Zoom recordings, I just want to point out how to access your recordings and your transcripts and video for that. So I've logged into Carmen Zoom, and I'm going to scroll down to the recordings tab, and these are where all my recordings are housed. I think a lot of us have already been here at some point. But if you click on one of your recordings, well, I had 2 recordings during this meeting. This is where you're going to find your files that you can download from Zoom. So you can, if you click download, I think that'll download all 3 files. There's usually 3 files there. Or you can download just the audio transcript, the audio, or the version of the recording that's the shared screen with speaker view, or however you had that orientation during your meeting. So those are the three files that you can download from Zoom. And depending on where you're hosting your video, if you have an approved YouTube account, which we'll get to in a second, or if you're hosting on MediaSite, you can upload the audio transcript to either of those places. So you have something to start with when you're editing those closed captions. Amy, did you want to go to YouTube or MediaSite next?
Let's jump over to YouTube. No, let's do MediaSite. Can you quickly show from Zoom, so we don't have to hop back, that import feature for recordings from Zoom?
Yes, I can do that.
So
go ahead.
While Summer finds the buttons to get us there, go ahead. I should probably just let you showcase the buttons.
Yeah, so let's see. I'm gonna go to I'm gonna re-log in. So this is where you're gonna be. Also have to move things around my screen. Okay, so you have the schedule a meeting button on the right hand side, and this is in the desktop app. When you go to schedule a meeting, you can automatically have your meeting import to MediaSite so that you don't have to download the video and upload it to MediaSite. So far, it's not really, this is a relatively new feature, so it's not really importing the transcripts very well. So that part you'll have to do, you'll have to download and upload the transcript. But when you go to schedule a meeting, and this is in both the desktop app and the web app, if you scroll down to the bottom, there is an option to import to MediaSite. And you can only do this with meetings, not with webinars. So you want to select yes, and then click save when you're scheduling a meeting. So if you know that you're going to want to record this meeting, you can also edit previously scheduled meetings to include the upload to MediaSite. And then once you're finished with your recording on Zoom, it'll take a little bit longer than it does to actually update the recording and the transcript in Zoom, but it will eventually show up in your MediaSite folder. I think it's supposed to show up in your draft folder, but when I tested it yesterday, it showed up right on my main channel. So I'm going to go to my MediaSite now. So this was one of them one of the meetings that it was 6 seconds long as I was testing this. This uploaded directly from Zoom to MediaSite. I did not have to do anything except if I have captions. It says it has captions, but it doesn't. If I want to upload my captions, I'll go to my Zoom meeting. Move this around my screen, my recordings. This might not be the right file. This is it. And then I'll download that audio transcript and then upload it to MediaSite. And I can show you how to do that once you're in MediaSite. Or Amy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll take a moment to step back and talk about MediaSite a little bit. So MediaSite is the university approved video hosting tool. So it's kind of like YouTube, but not as flashy, right? It's what the university has at the enterprise level. The nice part about this, it is approved for more internal data, and it does allow you to embed those videos. And so that way, if you're wanting to play video content in a course or play video content on a county webpage, you can embed it that way. While MediaSite, the import from Zoom to MediaSite doesn't really solve our captioning issue up front, what it does help us do is avoid losing those videos to the 120-day limit in Zoom without a lot of extra work. I know when they changed the limits, a bunch of us were scrambling to save content. So this function does help push your content to a place where it can be housed and not deleted after 120 days. And it gives you space to edit captions a bit, which Summer's going to show next.
Right. And Dominique had a question. I don't think it was answered. Do you have to schedule a meeting to import to MediaSite? I believe you do have to schedule the meeting to have it automatically upload to MediaSite, but you can download it and then upload it to MediaSite if you didn't have an already scheduled meeting. So once I'm in MediaSite, this is my main homepage. For those of you who have never used it before, I'm going to click on this recording, the 6-second short recording that I did, and show you how to upload and edit closed captions within MediaSite. So when I'm on this page, over on the right-hand side of the screen, there's an edit details button. It's not as intuitive as some. But when I go into edit details, I'm going to then go down underneath the video player to the delivery tab. And that's where I can select to upload my transcript. So this button may or may not automatically be checked. The audio transcriptions button, you'll want to check that off. And then because I've uploaded from Zoom to MediaSite automatically, it may already have this choose a provider for captions radio button filled in, but we're actually going to manually upload an audio caption file. And so if I, from Zoom, have already downloaded my audio caption file, I'm going to select a file from my computer. And I'm not sure which one. It looks like it was this file, and I don't think it's the right file, but I'm just for demonstration purposes. It'll open, it'll upload, and then it'll automatically match up the timestamps if it's the correct video. And from there, you'll save it. My presentation has been updated with my caption file. And because I want to edit it to make it a little bit more accurate, I'm going to go on the right-hand side of the screen down to the edit captions button. And then it'll bring me to this screen with my video. This is my 6-second video. And this is where I will add a transcription at whatever point in the video. And we're going to provide help documentation on how to edit captions in MediaSite. But this is where you go to do it. So I can, if I want to type something in that I missed, I can add that. Well, it might not let me add it because it's such a short video. but it works a little better if you have a longer video.
So we will share the help documentation for this. I mean, the take home here is this allows you to edit your closed captions within MediaSite. Then that will carry over to your final product. You can insert captions, edit the timestamps. Now, I will say, because you can, it's still a little clunky. Be prepared to have your patience or coffee or both. It does work, but it's not the most intuitive thing ever. And like Brian says, please be aware, MediaSite can be very slow. You have to be careful with video length for these videos to render well for your users. I think there are some settings that we can adjust to alter the playback quality, but that can be troublesome. If you're showing images that have a lot of detail, we don't want to scale back that quality for the sake of the video speed. So yeah, MediaSite's not always the best choice, but it is one of the choices we have available that is university approved and does allow for embedding and caption editing. And Alexis asked if MediaSite is free. Yes, MediaSite is free. It's the university provided it's the university provided service. It's the enterprise level. So there is support available for this service within the university as well. And then there was one more question. Oh, Anne asked, are transcript and closed caption file the same thing? They're very similar. So a closed caption file is a certain file format that comes with timestamps to sync to a video. And a transcript file is a word for word, pretty much a copy of closed captions, except that it's a text file that is more reader friendly, and it's typically downloadable and may or may not have the timestamps on it. Usually we prefer, Summer, isn't the latest recommendations to take those timestamps off the transcript, or do you remember from your?
I believe that it's better to do that. That might be my own intuition. That's what I do, because otherwise screen readers will read out, especially with the Zoom timestamps. They're so long and make so little sense that I take the timestamps off.
Okay, so that was my thoughts as well. So transcripts generally read better without the timestamps, but the timestamps are necessary for the closed caption files. So we will keep trucking forward because it is already 10:34.
Yeah, and
we got more to cover.
I pulled up a better example of a video to where you can actually add, I want to show that this does work, to add an extra caption in there if I want to do that, but I'm not going to save this one. And so we'll move on to the YouTube. Some of us do have an option to use YouTube, and YouTube is great if you have an approved channel, because it does automatic closed captions. So you could just upload your video to YouTube and not have to worry about transferring a caption file. Amy, I'll let you talk a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll take over about the policy data security bits here. So if you have an already approved YouTube channel, you're good to go, as long as as long as the data is public. If you do not yet have an approved YouTube channel, you can go through the social media account approval process, which I can track that down if you need it, and we can get that to you. Cheryl Buck also knows about this process, so you might reach out to Cheryl Buck. And this would be, you have to get an approved account with the social media guidelines and all that. And then again, always public data on YouTube. It is not approved for internal or otherwise. It must be public data. Nikki says, yeah, sometimes the captions from YouTube are terrible. I will say in recent years, they've improved so long as the audio quality in your video is good. So if you're starting from the ground up, please take the time to do some test run with your microphone setup and your audio, and hear what that sounds like. Try to do your best to minimize background noise. And some of that comes into production with mics and like wind and all that. And but if you're like doing a lecture capture or a PowerPoint slide presentation, have a quiet audience, get yourself a headset. If you have quality audio, your chances are very good to have the audio transcription turn out better. And yeah, Nikki's had some run-ins with things turning into curse words and explicit language. So we do recommend that you upload these videos as like unlisted videos, so they're not searchable, but until you get that closed caption file cleaned up. And then you can publish the video with closed captions. You also cannot publish the video without the closed captions. So do upload them as unlisted until you can edit and tidy them. And then once they're ready to be released, you can either send those direct links or embed your videos where you want them. But all of this also just boils down to good production and good, as far as, taking the time and the care to produce a good product. So it does take some time, but with the proper planning, it does work. Again, still requires editing because it's produced by artificial intelligence. So Summer, do you want to show where you're at with the editing?
Yes. So I'm gonna, if you have your own channel, you want to go into your channel dashboard and into your content. And then I'm just gonna select to view the details of one of these videos. I already have the caption files edited and published. So when you're in the details of a specific video, to edit your captions, you're going to go down to subtitles and click on that button. And that brings up your timestamped captions that you can edit. And you can also download, if you're posting this somewhere, download the subtitles from here, and this will, you'll download the subtitle file. And if I switch to edit as text, it gets rid of all my timestamps. And then I can click on the ... and then download subtitles, and it'll actually download a text txt file, a text file, and that's what I'll upload as my transcript. And if I open that up, you'll see it does not have timestamps. Whereas if I go to edit timings and click the ... to download subtitles, it downloads as a SBV file, in which I can't open on here, but it has the timestamp. So if you're uploading it to MediaSite or somewhere else, it'll match up those timestamps. And
Anne has a
sorry.
Anne has a great question in the chat. If you embed a video with closed captions, such as a YouTube video in Canvas, you also upload a transcript. So yes, we are required to provide both a closed caption file for the video and a separate transcript, because those transcripts are going to be perceivable by people who use screen readers. Screen readers are not going to be able to access a closed caption file. So we always want to provide both.
And for Zoom files, they download as a VTT file, which what you can do with a VTT file, if I can open this up, get rid of all the timestamps, and then you can put this either in a notes file or on a Word document. I was listening to NPR News during this one. So, and then you can copy and paste this into a Word document and upload that, or into just a regular text file, because the VTT file may be a little bit difficult to open on some computers. I know it's a lot of different information for different uses.
Elaine asked about transcript files. We usually recommend Word or text files for transcripts. And Cheryl Buck has posted the social media guidelines. Thank you so much. Those are available in the chat.
All right. I think that any specific questions, we have a couple minutes about any other questions about using either MediaSite, Zoom, YouTube.
Are there any programs that will convert the VTT file to text. I can do it with some of the editors, but I didn't know if there was something that was easier than pulling it up in an editor and doing all the timestamps out and reformatting it.
So I do not know of like an approved service that would do that. I'm wondering if you might be able to, I've heard that there's new functionality in Adobe Premiere Pro that I haven't messed with yet, but I wonder if you put the caption file in there, if Premiere Pro would let you download it out as a different caption file, but I haven't tinkered with it, so I'm not sure.
I've done some of that, and yes, you can do it, but I haven't had good success with the transfer.
Gotcha.
Anne asked, I was typing it out, but it might just be easier to answer. Does it make sense to edit the transcript before uploading to YouTube? When you upload to an approved YouTube channel, it makes the most sense to edit those captions in YouTube and then switch it over to edit text and download the transcript. That way it's already accurate when you go to post it in Canvas. So I would not, you could do it that way. You could edit the transcript, but it's going to be easier for making captions accurate if you actually do the editing in YouTube. Can a screen reader view that file in the expandable portion in Canvas? Yes, a text file they can, I believe so, Amy. You're on mute, I think.
Elaine, are you asking about the preview function?
That was my understanding.
I'm not 100% certain on that. And that might be why they recommend that those always be downloadable. But when you post them to Canvas,
They are. Yeah.
they are downloadable. So.
All right. Okay.
I can look into that, Elaine. That's a good question.
I'm going to stop my share and try to bring that PowerPoint back up. Because we have one other thing to talk about. Amy. Oh no, we're not gonna.
Yeah, we're just gonna show you the resources because there are a lot of them.
Well, I'm trying to share my screen, but it's not working. Okay.
So while Summer finds the resources, we've got a few minutes here for questions. Does anybody have any additional questions? I appreciate you all contributing to the conversation, asking your questions in chat.
Being very patient with this. This is one of the more trickier things when it comes to accessibility. So
one other thing we didn't mention so much is that if you have resources, if you have an award or a pot of money that you could use and you want to use it, you can hire captioning vendors. I know money kind of hard to come by sometimes, so we didn't really talk too much about hiring a captioning vendor, but you can learn how to do that at the Digital Accessibility Services. And did it get put in the let me grab that link. So I will put the link for Digital Accessibility Services in the chat. And there's all kinds of great training also available there. And there's great instructions on how to hire a captioning vendor. One thing I did notice in the instructions when I used them is it glosses over a little bit that you'll be needing a quote from the vendor to put together your requisition. But there are instructions on how to hire a captioning vendor there. So I would recommend visiting those if you're interested in hiring a caption vendor. We must use a contracted one from the university, and they have the rates available on the site, so you can check that out if you're interested in hiring a captioning vendor. is editing easier in one platform versus the other? So I would say that YouTube probably has the easiest editing platform, but again, not everybody has an approved YouTube channel, or you might not have public data. Zoom, you can edit the captions when you share, but it doesn't allow you to add extra timestamps, so that can be a challenge. And in MediaSite, you can add those extra timestamps. It just takes a little bit of patience. So they all have pros and cons to them. Nothing is ever perfect. Do we have any other questions before we adjourn for today?
I was muted, but I was gonna say, I think it would be good. I can put together kind of a follow-up email to this specific session, since there is a lot of information just with the key points from this session, and send that out to everyone.
Yes, and we will put together the documentation for Zoom and for MediaSite and YouTube and share that out with everyone. If you're interested in Scarlet Canvas courses, please join us next week for our last session in this series to learn about how to build accessible courses in Scarlet Canvas. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Summer. That follow-up email will be very helpful.
Yes,
There's a lot.
it is.
See you in the next.